All right, Photek, composer of How to Get Away with Murder. Talk a bit about when you were first asked to compose the music for the show. What were some of your initial ideas for the compositions?
Well, on that first meeting, I think one concept I had from reading the script was that we could have different motifs for different parts of the. So this is obviously for the pilot. Different motifs for different storylines that all converge at the end of the episode to create a piece of music.
Hmm.
And then there was a sort of end montage piece at the end of that episode that they'd already chosen. And so I wanted to work towards comprising that track at the end of it. I think it was a concept that actually Alex Pitsavis, the music supervisor, and the producers had actually talked about earlier on by coincidence. So we all hit it off immediately based on that concept. And as it happened, that concept got completely abandoned in favor of serving the picture once we'd all seen what it actually looked like. So we had a pretty elaborate concept that we all agreed on before, which got sidelined as the project went ahead.
Uh-huh. So then what did you settle on after your initial idea got sidelined? What did you
Well, yeah, the first idea is very conceptual, and what we settled on was telling the story scene by scene.
Mhm.
And then what happened over the next few episodes after the show got picked up was then themes started to develop and become very obvious to us. And I think there probably ended up being about 5 or 6 main genre types for the musical score, depending on what the scenario was.
Mhm. So, with material like this, it's very easy for the music to sort of push it into melodrama. Were you ever afraid of that, or was that something you even thought
Yeah,
about?
it's always a danger, and I think sometimes we play quite an obvious hand
Mm.
where needed, and sometimes we rely more on misdirection than anything else. And that's something that I learned from Pete Nowell, the showrunner. With his way of storytelling, will often flash back to something that supposedly happened previously that turns out to be a lie later on. And as the season went on, I was struggling more and more to keep up with the web of lies that they were weaving with the script. And sometimes I'd score a scene, how you'd interpret it when you were a viewer watching it for the first time, as I often was. And then Pete would ask me, "No, we need to spin this in a different direction. I mean, you know what's going to happen ultimately from this scene, but we actually want to misdirect people at this point." So that happened quite a lot.
That's really interesting. I mean, uh, I'm wondering how exactly do you convey misdirection in a show musically? How exactly do you do that?
Well, it's setting a tone for a scenario where I know what's going to happen next because I've seen the script, or this is a my third time watching it.
Mhm.
I'm sort of anticipating what's going to happen next, and I'm spelling that out in the previous scene that this is what we're leading up to. Whereas to keep you on the edge of your seat, you need to maybe play something a little more innocently that is quite sinister in the next 15 minutes. That was a turning point that led to something bad, and I played it that way, but the viewer's not supposed to know that.
Mhm.
So you have to play those elements down, or for example, if there's an seemingly innocent comment made, play it as a seemingly innocent comment rather than remember that this was said because this is going to come back and bite you.
Ah. So, talk a bit about the process of scoring one of these episodes. You see it for the very first time. Is there any kind of temp music or, you know,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So the first time I'll see an episode is at a spotting session, which is where the producers, often the director, the showrunner, the editors, will all sit in the room together, maybe 12 of us, and we'll watch that episode, the final edit for the first time. And there'll be temp music in there, the earlier you are in the season, the more of other people's music is being used. And as the season goes on, your own music gets recycled to the next episode, and you start to hear more of your own music occurring in the first cut of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we usually see it for the first time as a team. And I noticed that Pete and Betsy Beers will often be watching us as a group to see what our reactions are in case they feel like they need to tell the story a little differently. So at that point, it's a locked picture and it's not supposed to change. But occasionally we'll misread it as an audience, and we'll miss something that was important, and there'll be a recut.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of a test audience for the showrunner too.
Okay. So I guess if it passes with you, then it's ready to keep going, or is that...
if we react correctly, then he feels he's done his job.
Yeah. So has there ever been a moment in the scoring of the show where you've written a particular piece of music that you're really proud of, but it just doesn't fit with the scene, or you find that you have to start from scratch? Or...
It happens all the time, yeah. It happens a lot, and I think there are probably about 2 or 3 particular pieces of music that I thought were fantastic, but on deliberation with everybody, we needed to go in a different direction, and those don't get forgotten. They sort of go on a back burner, a sort of spare parts bin, and people will recall what they were. It's not just down to me to always say, oh, I remember that genius piece of work that I did 6 weeks ago. Quite often Pete or Betsy or Bill will say, yeah, what about that thing that we used for that courtroom scene that didn't play? How about a remix of that, something a little different but based on that theme? Mm-hmm. So nothing really gets lost.
Right. Let's talk about the episode that you've submitted for Emmy consideration. What was it about that particular episode that you think stands out as being, a particularly good piece of composition, or something that showcases your work very well?
Well, it's the Best Christmas Ever is the episode, and I like that because the first of all, you can really hear the music breathe in the opening minutes of the episode, and you've got an incredible scenario with Viola in a hotel room getting drunk day after day. She's sort of hiding away in a hotel room, and all of the rest of the cast are away having their Christmas dramas with their families. And it's actually a theme that started to recur a lot musically, and you get to hear it with no dialogue over the music. And that was my first instinct, was to go with something where you can hear the music very clearly early on in the episode. And I think also that episode represents an average episode pretty well in terms of the musical spread. Mm-hmm. That was the thinking behind it.
Right. It's interesting how much television's changed in the last decade. I think there was certainly a network drama, something that you would expect in the way that it's shot and put together, and certainly in the music as well. But now all that has changed and evolved dramatically. Can you talk about how it's evolved for you as a composer in your work on something like this?
Well, I think when I've got a history as a recording artist and making electronic music and putting out records, and so my view of what should be in movies and TV 10, 15 years ago was completely at odds with what was in film scoring at the time. And I think actually culture has come around to my way of thinking. I guess it's just a generational thing. So I'm sort of lucky that I've come of age for writing music for picture at a time where my sort of music is acceptable with picture. And the funny thing now is that often a director or a producer will want me to push further than where I thought they would be comfortable. So it's a pretty great position to be in, and especially with there's so much great television now. It's incredible. There are as many good TV shows as movies, and that wasn't the case, I think, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Where do you see the show heading? It's the second season is premiering in September.
Yes.
Where do you see it going and your work evolving with it?
Well, this is the burning question, and we're all asking it. It's funny, we all saw each other at a screening 3-4 weeks ago, and of course that's the question everybody's asking Pete, and he's like, I really don't know right now. Quite often, as each week comes round, they'll pick a dramatic change of direction for the show, and I think that translates into the agony of watching the show. Actually, is nobody really knows what's going to happen yet. And I couldn't even get a sort of a broad concept of what the scenario would be for this season when I was talking to Pete not so long ago. So I have no idea what's going to happen next. All I know is I'm going to have to adapt very quickly musically. I think probably 50% of what I wrote in season 1 will apply as a feel, and I'll probably need to come up with another new 50% to keep up with the incredible writers on the show. You know, I really don't know how they do it.
Right. Yeah. Well, Photek, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, and congratulations on the show.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye.